everyone, welcome back to Warhammer 40k, a universe so dark that daddy issues are universal. Last time we covered the Imperial Guard, the Hammer of the Emperor, and the endless meat grinder of humanity. However, now we are heading back into the realms of chaos, and looking at one of the more interesting chaos factions, the World Eaters. An army who has decided that the way of melee is their bread and butter, and who started out as the example all shock troops should emulate for the Imperium, but degraded to being the maddened butchers of the Blood God. So, let's get into it, as the World Eater army is one of the smallest armies in 40k, unit-wise.
What the fuck was that shit?! That is bullshit!
Oh my god!
Don't even tell me that shit's for real!
Created like the other Space Marine legions, the World Eaters were the 12th legion to be made by the Emperor and his scientists. Their original name, however, was the Warhounds, and they proved to be one of the most effective shock trooper legions during the early days of the Great Crusade. During the early years, they would receive accolades and honors and were what Imperial Command considered the model that other shock troop legions should follow. The Warhounds were a stark contrast at the time to the Blood Angels and Space Wolf legions, who were much more barbaric in nature at that time. However, it would all change when their Primarch, Angron, was found on the backwater world of New Syria. New Syria was a world that ran on slave labor, and the young Angron sadly had been enslaved at a very young age and forced to fight in their gladiatorial arenas. Even worse, he, like many other gladiatorial slaves, were implanted with a device called the Butcher's Nails, a cybernetic implant that was designed to enhance aggression and rewire the brain to make the subject associate killing with pleasure, and removes emotional responses during battle. Angron, despite this, proved to be a charismatic and intelligent individual, eventually leading a rebellion against the lords of New Syria. However, this rebellion would end in devastating failure, as Angron sadly lacked the resources, technology, and military power that New Syria's lords had. Angron and his now exhausted rebels prepared their final stand in the mountains. But then, the Emperor revealed himself to Angron, telling him of his grand destiny to fight wars among the stars, and that New Syria was a waste of time. However, Angron told the Emperor where he could rightfully shove it, and told him that he was going to die along with his brothers and sisters of the gladiatorial pits. The Emperor, deciding against doing the smart and reasonable thing, instead kidnapped Angron by teleporting him mere hours before the last stand. Angron, in shock, anger, and grief, which is understandable, would forever hold a lasting hatred for the Emperor, as the Golden Dictator had denied Angron an honorable death. This led to obvious complications, not only with trying to integrate Angron into his legion's command structure, but as it turns out, the Imperial text could not remove the Butcher's Nails from Angron without killing him. Seeing Angron as nothing more than a tool with a time limit, the Emperor wrote him off, and Angron was left to his own devices with his legion. Angron went through a very understandable depressive phase, and didn't want anything to do with his legion. However, one man was able to convince Angron to lead the 12th, Captain Kharn of the 8th Assault Company. Though nearly being beaten to death by Angron, Kharn would tell the enraged Primarch that the Warhounds wished to be like those brothers and sisters who Angron fought alongside, and wished to be his Eaters of Worlds. Angron, seeing Kharn's perspective, would take command of the now newly christened World Eaters. Slowly, the World Eaters would go from the honored shock trooper legion to being seen as nothing more than a legion of madmen and butchers. This was because, to understand their Primarch and the warriors he fought alongside, they needed to be implanted with the Butcher's Nails, which turned the warriors of the 12th Legion from a disciplined force to being nothing more than a band of simple marauders. All because they wished to appease their father and gain his respect and loyalty. Then, the events of the Horus Heresy would happen, with the World Eaters being one of the first to side with Horus and the traitors, and the Legion's fate would be sealed. During the Heresy, Angron and his Legion, along with the Warbearers Legion and their Primarch Lorgar, would return to New Syria, wiping it clean of all life. During a battle with the Ultramarines on New Syria, Lorgar conducted a ritual to make Angron ascend to demonhood against his will. The newly ascended Angron would now find himself a servant of the blood god Kharn. The rest of the heresy sadly played out with the World Eaters becoming nothing more than berserkers, following their Primarch into the Siege of Terra. However, with the death of Horus and Angron being banished to the Warp during the siege, the Legion would be barely held together by some officers who retained some sense of sanity as they fled to the Eye of Terror. But the World Eaters would finally break apart due to the actions of Kharn. Kharn, during a battle against the Emperor's children on the frozen demon world of Skalthrax, became enraged at his brother's perceived cowardice as they stopped fighting to shelter from the freezing cold of the planet. Kharn butchered and burned any who got in his way, and with Kharn killing what was left of the officer corps, the World Eaters would shatter into roaming warbands led by what was sadly left. The World Eaters of modern 40k are now a bloodstained shadow of their former selves. Maddened butchers who only kill for the blood god's satisfaction, with Kharn and Angron being reluctant servants of the blood god, but unable to resist the battlefield, as the butcher's nails always drive them endlessly forward. Nothing else matters. There shall only be blood for the blood god, and skulls for his skull throne. Let's get into the army.
You wanna fucking fight? You wanna go? You wanna throw down? I'm fine with that, you piece of shit!
The World Eaters are best described as a murder tornado. Your strategy should always be getting your army to melee combat as fast as bloody possible. And the Blessings of Kharn, your army ability, helps in that way. At the start of the battle round, you roll 8d6, and depending on what you rolled, you can use your dice to pay the cost and pick up to 2 blessings. These blessings can range from between improving your movement, giving your units extra attacks, and being able to charge after advancing. However, once the battle round is over, the blessings reset, and you have to roll 8d6 again, leading to an army that wants to hit hard, hit fast, and leave nothing behind. Now let's get into your units.
And I'm a fucking smarty pants, dude. I graduated never.
The World Eaters are an army of melee shock troops, and there is little to no strategy outside of fucking get 'em! Their main infantry unit is the Khorne Berserkers, one of the scariest melee units in the game. Their unit ability, Blood Surge, allows them to move after being shot at by enemy units. Should a model in the Berserker unit be killed, the unit can move d6 inches towards the nearest enemy unit. This makes your Berserkers highly mobile and able to close gaps between themselves and enemy units. However, you cannot get into engagement range with a Blood Surge move, and you are unable to Blood Surge if your Berserkers are battle shocked. So, beware of that.
Okay. What? Don't check my advance! Don't check it! Don't check!
The Eightbound are your elite units, and they are fucking terrifying. You get 2 flavors of them, regular Eightbound and exalted Eightbound. Regular Eightbound are anti-infantry and anti-elite units, who have an aura ability which allows other World Eater units around them to reroll wound rolls of 1 against enemy units, or reroll all wound rolls if an enemy unit is below half strength. This makes them a strong centerpiece of your army. Exalted 8-bound are your heaviest hitting infantry unit, able to take down units like the Titanic Imperial Knights. Their ability forces enemy units in melee combat with them to make a special roll against their leadership stat, and if that unit fails, they are forced to stay in melee whether your opponent likes it or not. This makes for a scary unit that can forcefully hold units down if they can't outright kill them, letting your army finish up what they are doing to come help, or making sure more troubling units are unable to do anything. 8-bound are one of your strongest melee units, and you should always consider bringing them.
He's gonna do the chin move! Unavoidable chin move! Unavoidable chin move!
World Eaters make use of the same vehicles regular Chaos Marines use, and are also some of the only ways to get ranged units in your army. But if you want a breakdown of them, you can check out my Chaos Space Marine video. However, there is one vehicle that has been made exclusive to the World Eaters. The Lord of Skulls, a Titanic unit that is designed to basically murder anything it touches. If the Lord of Skull kills an enemy unit, or multiple enemy units, you can add 1 or subtract 1 from a Blessing of Khorne die roll, changing as many dice as units killed. However, you can only change each die once if you do this. The Lord of Skulls is always fun to see on the table, but there is something much scarier than it.
How about this? You go about your fucking happy old day, your gay old day, as they said in the gay old times.
Right now, aside from one other leader unit, Kharn is the only foot-slugging infantry leader unit in your army, and he is considered to be one of the best melee leaders in the game, being able to kill most infantry or elites that come his way. The unit he is with is able to reroll hit rolls and wound rolls of 1, and should Kharn be killed, he gets to fight again before his model is removed, which can make him and the unit he leads an extremely dangerous missile to point at your opponent's most dangerous units. However, there is a reason he is the Betrayer. After he and his unit make a successful charge, you are forced to roll a check against his leadership stat. If you fail, one model from Kharn's unit is killed by him. So be aware of that when charging into the enemy line.
So fucking dumb. It's bullshit. You gotta go through this whole thing again. It's already fucking garbage.
Angron. You poor, poor bastard. Angron is the newest Traitor Primarch to return to 40k, and of course, the bastard is THE murder tornado of melee combat. Even worse, during your Blessings of Khorne rolls, if you roll triple sixes, you can bring Angron back from the dead in reserves with full wounds. This makes for an extremely annoying and devastating Primarch, as he and Gullyman are the only 2 Primarchs who can come back from the dead. Not only that, but Angron wants to be leading the army from the front, being the tip of your spearhead, able to give aura abilities that support your World Eaters, whether it be making charges easier, giving extra attacks to other units, or allowing for units to re-roll hit rolls. He is an absolute melee monster. But that also shows the massive issue with this army.
I am in love with you.
You gotta let it go.
I want to put my face between your boobs.
Remember when I said your army is a murder tornado? Well, yeah, you are a one-hit wonder in most games you play. You either kill what you need to kill in the first 2 or 3 turns of the game, or you are dead. You have little to no ranged units in your army, meaning that armies that are extremely flexible or outrange you are going to be an uphill battle for World Eaters. Granted, no one does what you do better, and you will 9 times out of 10 come out on top in melee. But you have to get there through your opponent's shooting phases, and much worse, World Eaters most of the time want to go first, because if they don't, well, hope you like watching your army melt and having a blunted spear. And that's the World Eaters, a pure melee army. This army on paper is extremely simple. You are a hammer and your opponent's army is the nails. However, their glaring and extremely obvious weakness is that if you can't get into melee combat, you're up shit creek without a paddle. There are plenty of ways to get into melee combat though, and that shouldn't discourage you from playing one of the most fun melee armies in the game. And well, there is something oddly satisfying about playing World Eaters, from my experience. Sometimes, playing an army with such a simple objective can be a refreshing change of pace from other armies. Thanks for watching, and when we come back, we will be talking about the Pirates of 40k, the Drukhari, also known as the Dark Eldar. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Patreon to see videos early and support the channel. See you all next time.